Exercise 20-27. We're going to do a production cost report, but it's going to be for the second department. So Refreshing Water Company produces premium bottled water. In the second department, the bottling department, which is what we're doing the production cost report, and I've done some T accounts in Excel, and this is a screenshot down here of it. So here's the bottling department in the workflow. So conversion costs are incurred evenly throughout the bottling process, but packaging materials, which would be the bottle, are not added until the end of the process. So what's going on here is when they're bottling their premium water, they take water from their raw materials inventory and it goes into the first process, which is probably the filtering department. I don't think this problem explains what the name of the first department is. But the water gets filtered here, and then once it's done filtering, it's going to transfer into the bottling department. And at the end of this process, it's going to be put into the direct materials, which is the bottle. Costs in the beginning work in process inventory include transferred in costs of $1,400, direct labor $700, manufacturing overhead of $330. March data for the bottling department follow. And I forgot to mention the final part of the workflow process down here is once the premium water is bottled, it's therefore finished, and it will transfer out of this department and go into the finished goods inventory, where it will sit until it's sold. So as always, for the production cost report, we're going to start with a units section. So all we'll be talking about is units, which is this part. So this information here about costs, we don't need for this section. So we can hide those over here. So our beginning inventory is 15,000 units, and I've placed that here in our T account to help you understand what's going on here. So we started with 15,000 units, 15,000 gallons, I believe. So these 15,000 gallons were 40% complete. And because they were incomplete, that's why they started this month in the work-in process for the bottling department. Then we started production of 160,000 units. So remember, since this department is the second department, it doesn't actually start anything new. What it does is it takes units from the filtering department. So these 160,000 units, even though it says started, really it means transferred in. So you can call them started or transferred in. So we had 160,000 transferred in. So our units to account for are 15,000 plus 160,000. And then we transferred out 152,000. So 152,000 units were bottled and then transferred out to the finished goods inventory, which means the rest. So 175, these two combined are 175,000 minus 152,000 means there's 23,000 units left that are unfinished. They are 70% complete, but are still unfinished. So that's why I have this 23,000 is right here. So let me scroll down a little bit. So now we can place our labels for the units to account for. So that's these two units, the beginning balance and the units transferred in or started, however you want to phrase it. So we have beginning work in process, and that's this 15,000, which also comes from here. And then the other units to account for are the ones that were transferred in, these 160,000 units. So I wish they hadn't called them production started, because I think transferred in is a better way to phrase them. So now the total units to account for, we're just going to add 15,000 plus 160,000 gives us 175, 000 units to account for. Now we have to talk about the units accounted for. So units accounted for are the ones transferred out and the ones still in the ending inventory because they're unfinished. So those labels are completed and transferred out. So that's this 152,000. And because they were transferred out, by definition, that means they were completed. And then we have these ending units, which also comes from here. 23,000. Ending work in process. So we take 152,000 plus 23,000, and that gives us 175, 000. So double check your work. The units to account for, the units to account for up here have to be equal to the units accounted for. So now we're going to calculate the equivalent units of production. So we're going to start with just this column, transferred in units. So these transferred in units are units that were finished in the filtering department and were transferred into the bottling department. So we had to figure out what percentage of their costs are going to go from the filtering department to the bottling department. Well, it's 100% of those costs are going from the filtering department to the bottling department. The costs are not going to magically go away when we transfer from one department to another. In fact, they're going to accumulate. So the costs that were in the filtering department that got transferred in, these units are going to have 100% of the cost from the previous department. So that means for here, 152,000 times 100% is 152,000. 23,000 times 100% is 23,000. So we take 152 plus 23, we get 175, 000. So now let's talk about the 152,000 units that were completed and transferred out. Because they were transferred out, that means they're completed. That means 100% of their costs are accounted for. Now let's talk about these 23,000 units that were in the ending balance and therefore unfinished. They're 70% complete. So let's talk about just direct materials. So if these 23,000 units are 70% complete, how many of those units have the direct materials added to them? Well, remember, the direct materials, in this case, the packaging, which is the bottles, are not added until the end of the process. But these units are only 70% of the way through. So none of these units have had the direct material costs attached to them. So this would be 0. And then finally, of these 23,000 units, what percent have had the conversion costs added to them? Well, remember up here it says conversion costs are incurred evenly throughout the bottling process. And what percent are these 23,000 units, what percent are they complete? 70% complete. So to calculate the equivalent units, so 23,000, these 23,000 units times 70% gives us 16,100 units, equivalent units. So now we need the total units accounted for direct materials. We take the 152,000 plus 0, that gives us 152,000. Then for the total units accounted for conversion costs, we take 152,000 plus 16,100 gives us 168,000, 100 equivalent units. So in the next video, we will continue with the costs.